It always just makes me laugh when, like, you know, it's a strange thing to like talk to a computer screen, but there's a feeling inside that I know that I'm talking to people, and so that makes me laugh because I'm like, this thing ain't real, which I'm talking to, but I know that there are real people on the other side of it, and so that brings out that chuckle, which just like naturally bubbles up whenever I begin one of these recordings. So. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. This is Mike. Today is February 26, year 2021, depending upon the calendar you use. And welcome to the big show. Maybe you're noticing that the backdrop is a little bit different. I am in the basement right now. I've got like a really kind of special table here. Let me see if I can even show you this table. Let's see, I'll turn this around. I built this years ago. It's called the Phi table. Let's see. And it's built on the Phi ratio, or Phi rectangle. And when I make art, when I used to make the collage work, like I'd like to make it on here because I like the idea of what I was doing was built upon the foundation of the golden ratio and all that that represents. So anyway, so I'm in the basement. Can't record upstairs right now. The basement tends to freak out a lot of people, but I like it down here. I don't know what that says about me. So where to begin? First thing, I guess, in my last video, I guess I indicated that I was not going to be doing any more YouTube videos, with the exception of like the one-on-one conversations, which I'll have. I've got one scheduled in a day or two with Ross Ben, and like hopefully I'll do another one with Howdy and some other folks. Like I still put those up on YouTube, but I was saying that I'm not going to do any of the other videos on YouTube. And some of the comments were, well, just, you know, can you still do some of the freebies? Like your half of it, can you give me like half, and that would be good. And so I like that. I don't want to, you know, the people who create content, you know, if you're watching this and you create content, you know the same thing. It's like you're doing this because you want people to watch it. You want to go and connect with people, or at least share with the inner world, you know, what you need to share. So, you know, obviously the desire would be to share all the information and then to share it for free. I mean, it's not just about the money. It's also, I don't want to be on YouTube no more. But it's not fun. It's not fun having to be like, okay, guys, come and, you know, pay me a couple bucks to come and watch my stuff. But unfortunately for the viewer, myself, I'm a viewer of lots of stuff on YouTube. That's going to be more and more common. You know, we've already been seeing this, but I've been talking to some of my friends who also create content, and they're saying the same thing. Like, you know, YouTube is going to be basically just a commercial for the premium content, and so maybe the period of time in which there was lots of free content on at least YouTube is beginning to diminish. I mean, there are other YouTube alternatives, but they're not as good, you know, just in terms of like, you know, the technological aspects of the platform. Like it can take a long time, like 10 hours to upload something. And so, anyway, nonetheless, so that's what I'm going to do today. Like I'm going to go and, the first half of this is going to be public for all on YouTube, and then the remainder of it is going to be on my Subscribestar account. And, you know, if you're interested, you want to support, you want to get more information, please go there. And I also want to give you a little bit of, you know, heads up, I guess, of, you know, kind of how I'm going to be structuring things going forward. So I'm going to be on two platforms, I think. I'm going to have the Subscribestar, and then I'm also going to go on Rockfin. And they're going to be different. Subscribestar is, I'm going to do more personal stories. I'm I'm gonna probably begin doing weekly starboard stuff. Like if you're into the astrology, like all of those, that type of information and content, that's going to be on YouTube, and that's going to be mostly for people who just who like the personal element, I suppose. And then on Rockfin, and if you're not familiar with Rockfin, it's I didn't know about them until like a couple weeks ago. Rockfin is more like a Netflix model, meaning that as a user, as a viewer, you pay a monthly fee, and then you have access to everyone's content who's on there. And there's the reason why I'm going to go on there is because I kind of like their model. But then what I like the most about it is, as I indicate, like no one likes to go and like say, hey, come and give me money so you can hear me talk. I mean, because we want to talk for free. But with Rockfin, it's not so much about like the individual. It's about access to the entire platform, and it's set up in such a way that all of the different channels and content creators, they get a little piece of the pie. And the way the Matrix manipulators are doing it right now. I mean, we the moment we don't need to have money to exist in this society, is the moment I think, everyone's going to go and do it for free. But anyway, that's what I'm doing now. And then the Rockfin stuff, what I'm going to post on there is going to be mostly about the Susquehanna mystery. And then I'm going to start a new thing with my friend Jesse. And it's going to be more about like treasure hunting, treasure hunting along with the Susquehanna. And treasure is not necessarily limited to like gold and silver. And so that's going to be how I'm going to set things up. But for the time being, I'll continue to put out stuff on YouTube, and this is going to be on the remainder of this. This will be on Subscribestar. I'm not on Rockfin. I imagine it'll probably take me a couple weeks before I get that kind of situated. So, all right. So what we're going to talk about today, this is really good. I want to talk about simulation, matrix, consciousness, understanding it, like and beginning to kind of like make this idea practical. Like, why am I keep talking about it? Like, it's not just to talk, it's to put into practice, and it's to put it into practice because there's going to be a benefit. And you're seeing this a lot right now. You're seeing a lot of people, a lot of content creators, people who like speak and share their perspective, their wisdom. There's been kind of a shift over the past couple of weeks. Some are going from like, this is how you resist, and like this is how you survive, and like all these sort of things. And my piece of the puzzle, part of the puzzle is consciousness, is understanding the role of consciousness in what lies ahead of us. And don't believe the news. Like, that's not the only game in town. But what I want to go and what I'm interested in is really beginning to share and teach these workings of consciousness as we begin to walk in the new reality. So I'm going to be talking about simulation and matrix consciousness. And then in the subscriber half, I'm going to go into a little bit more into the Tiger Woods occurrence. I'm not going to go deep into a lot of the stories which I've done in the past, but there is a definite significance in context to what happened with Kobe Bryant. And so these are good indicators as to kind of what's going on in at least Matrix world. And and we're all in Matrix world. We got a computer where you well, and we're in Matrix world. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as to what's going on in my personal life, and that's a lot of the good Subscribestar stuff. So with that said, let's get this going. So I want to begin by talking about drawing, like artistic drawing, and specifically the the act of drawing realistically. Maybe you have that talent or that skill, maybe it's a little bit of both, of being able to see something and then with a pencil or pen, be able to replicate that, in a two-dimensional, piece of paper, and it looks like the real thing you're looking at, that type of drawing. So if you know how to do that, or if you know people who know how to do that, or if you've ever taken like a drawing class, you know that the fundamental, the beginning of that skill is in a way of seeing and looking. Like literally the artist who draws realistically looks at whatever their subject is, whatever they're drawing, they're looking at it in a way which people who are unable to draw realistically don't. They see it differently. Quite literally, what they're doing is they're seeing it as it is. They're seeing it as it is. Like suppose you're drawing like a glass of water. And what the typical person does is they see the glass of water, and they say in their mind, like, oh, that's a glass of water. I'm drawing a glass of water, and there's a kind of like an oval on the top, and there are lines here, and and they go like that, and they draw and they draw it, and maybe it looks kind of like, maybe you understand what it is, but it's at best it's a symbol of what you're drawing. But the person who holds the capability and the talent to draw something and it looks just like it, they see it differently. They're looking not at it as a object, a symbol, and then replicating it as a symbol. They're like literally noticing like what the lines look like, and they're replicating the lines. This line is like this, and it ends here, and it's in proportion to this line like that, and they're very, very good at it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that is a shift in consciousness. That is like in the most literal sense. You are looking at it and you're interpreting it in a different way. Okay? And so now I want to go into matrix and simulation consciousness, and to help you to be able to understand the difference, because it's very, very similar conceptually as the difference between like someone who draws like a symbol of something and someone who draws an accurate representation. So we're going to begin with simulation. So let me take a step back. So there are three realities, and again, this is a model of explaining something. This is not like this is hard and fast how it is. We use models to understand abstract concepts so that they can become workable, applicable. You can apply them. So three realities. We've got the simulation, we've got the matrix, and we've got the greater reality. And the simulation is baseline reality, what we would call baseline reality from our experience being human beings. And so that is like another way of saying it's more or less interchangeable with the natural world. It's nature. But that's not simulation consciousness. And I pause for a second. Let me just go and clarify this. I'm not suggesting that nature is a computer simulation. I don't know. I don't think it is. The reason why I use that term is this part of experience of reality. The natural world by different peoples and different times is often referred to as something that's not real. Like the ancient people in what we now call India, they called the world Maya. It was an illusion. It wasn't real. The Aborigines in Australia, idea. They refer to the waking time when we're walking around on the earth. That's what they called was the dream time. It wasn't real. The quantum physicists, they tell us that, like, my hand is made of atoms and atoms are all empty. And so my hand should not be solid, but, and this is a fallacy that it seems to be solid, but, whatever. The reason why I use the term simulation is, the descriptions which are used to describe the baseline reality, and particularly of it not being real, are always in harmony or in context to the matrix in which that culture is a part of. And so we are in a computer focused time. And so we're going to use computer-focused language when they talk about like, all of this is a simulation. It's because they're tying it, that idea of it not being real has always been expressed, but the people who are introducing that to us are tying it into the way the Matrix works right now. So okay, so back to the simulation. So the simulation is the natural world. But that, just by thinking like, okay, it's a natural world, it's trees and rocks and rainbows and stuff. And all of the obvious processes, like the rising of the sun and the setting of the moon and all that sort of stuff. The moment that it's named, it shifts to matrix consciousness. And so let me first just make a distinction. There's the general matrix, like a matrix. A matrix lives within the simulation. And then there's the matrix. And the matrix is like the overarching, particularly now, like, control system that exists within the simulation. But every people which speaks, which have culture, all of that, those words and the speaking, that is all a matrix. It is all a matrix. It is a false reality built upon the simulation. And that's not to say that it's good or bad. I mean, they're obviously like better matrices than others, but like the being human requires a degree of matrix consciousness. Like, for me to go and say like, the tree is the simulation. Well, just the fact that I called the tree a tree is like, I have to use matrix consciousness. The true Tao is not the spoken Tao. Like, we use it in terms of being able to understand what we're working with. So when thinking of wanting to begin to experience simulation consciousness, and this is the reason why you're going to want to do simulation consciousness and really develop the muscle to be able to get into it. And we're not even getting into the greater reality yet. But the reason why is matrix, and specifically the matrix. The matrix is the guys who are doing all of the tap dancing right now. When we don't understand that subtle distinction between matrix thinking and simulation thinking and greater reality thinking, you're always going to fall back into matrix thinking. And you don't even realize it because it seems to be real. It seems to be real. But when you begin to understand the difference, when you begin to recognize that difference and what that feels like inside, like, okay, that's slightly different. I feel that now. I understand what that means. Then you are beginning to recognize how you can separate from the matrix. And when you separate from the matrix is when we begin to escape it. And that's when the real friggin' magic comes in. I use the word magic. So I want to talk about magic for just 1 second because magic is really important. I talk about magic a lot. So again, it's got a name. As soon as we got a name, as soon as we're talking about something, we're in matrix consciousness. But you need to have matrix consciousness to talk about stuff until that you can go and just like literally put the image from your forehead into my forehead, and I'm going to know exactly what you're trying to communicate. So the first thing we want to say about magic is it has many, many connotations. Like, there's stage magic, sleight of hand sort of stuff. There is ceremonial magic. and then there's just like kind of like general, just like the magic of reality. And what I mean by that is just like this kind of ununderstandable, is that even a word? Ununderstandable. Way, the cause and effect relationship, which we see in our experience, like synchronicity, or like, that could be like an example, or maybe like you're thinking about something and it shows up or something like that. So those are like the different things in magic. So are different implications with the word magic. That word magic is an umbrella word which includes those and other different sort of parts of magic. Folk magic is a little bit different than, like, it falls somewhere between like ceremonial magic and then like just like the magical world. So the point I wanted to make about bringing up magic is the natural magic of how human beings are able to interact in the simulation. So that's outside of the matrix, but they'll be in a matrix. Remember, you got to be in a matrix, because you don't escape the matrix. That's what's, it's tricky about understanding this concept. Like, if you're talking, if you're in community, if you know people, that's a matrix. That's a culture. That is an element of being human, but we want to be able to recognize some of the differences. So, when you are experiencing life as a human, there is a certain, what I'm going to call like a magical quality of like how we experience life, how things fall in our laps, how like things line up, how like all of these sort of things, like magic without doing the Enochian keys, or like, the Seder square, that's a type of a formalized magic, but there's a natural magic. But by naming it, it loses its power. It loses its power because now it becomes matrix consciousness. Because in order to be in the field of play of that magic, it has to be your mind is different. In the same way, like, if you're going to draw something and you want it to look realistically, your mind has to be different than like, oh, I'm just going to draw like this symbol of something. You're not consciously saying, oh, I'm going to draw a symbol of a glass, but like, you look at your work, a drawing, you're like, that don't look like it. Like, I get it. Like, I understand that's a drawing of a glass, but that doesn't look like a glass of water. And so it's that subtlety. And so these are the sort of skills, and this is this magic which I'm talking about. And we've all had touches of it. We want to become more and more versed in it, experientially versed. Like, it becomes part of the day-to-day life, because it is through that in which we navigate this changing of the guard, this changing of matrix systems, and the real, again, magic shows itself. And so the truth is, this is the truth. The truth is the magic which is not named, and then the magic which is not like ritualized, is the human birthright. That is the human birthright. You are just, it is your, just by being alive, that is part of your experience. But the very fact that I'm beginning to call it magic separates it from your understanding. Like, oh, well, magic is different than what I'm doing right now, because what I'm doing right now is this, but now I'm going to get in my magic mode. But the shift which we're all working to become stronger with, into more of this like simulation and greater reality consciousness, and they're always connected. There's no there's no 100% any of those. They're always blended, and they're always unique to the individual. The shift into that space, that inner space of understanding what that magic is your birthright is like that's a skill. It's really an unlearning. It's an unlearning is probably a better way. The unlearning is a skill. But I let me give you an example of this is what I was talking about. The magic is a birthright. When magic is truly understood as the birthright, as the way things of just being human is, and it's not labeled something else. It's not labeled something else. It's like, oh, this is something I learn, or this is something I do, as opposed to like it's always happening. I'm going to give you an example of that, something that you're doing all the time. And so, like, you're probably familiar slightly, maybe some of you like very much of like, what are the inner workings inside of the body during the digestive process? And like, yeah, like maybe, like I eat and then like, it goes to my stomach and then it goes through my intestines and then it leaves my body. All right. And then maybe like you might know a little bit more about like the actual things that are happening, like, what organs are doing what secretions are happening. But the truth of the matter is, you don't have to think about that. You don't have to think about that. That just happens. That is a birthright. That's what I mean by a birthright. That level of understanding of like, there's nothing to do. It's just there. I was going to use breathing. I was going to use breathing as the example and not digestion. But breathing is named. There are parts of the digestive process which is not named. And so because it's named, like, you're breathing. You're like, okay, I'm doing my inhale now and my exhale now. And so that's this kind of like, simulation matrix kind of consciousness. But there's a way to breathe, to learn to breathe and to do it in purely this like simulation, natural birthright way. So I want to give an example. Okay, so I don't know if I'm doing a good job like really illustrating the point I'm trying to make. So what I want you to do right now is it's probably going to be best to shut your eyes. This isn't a meditation, but it's kind of meditative. It's more imaginative. I want you to imagine or picture a river, probably one which and typically when I do this, I think obviously I think about the Susquehanna River a lot, and I see it in my head, in my mind's eye a lot, in the big picture. It kind of looks like a Y, if you will, with the Chesapeake Bay on the bottom. If you're doing anything like that, if you're seeing the river like in a map function, that immediately is, that is, that's matrix mentality. That's matrix mentality. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's matrix. We're moving away from that because you've never seen that. You don't know that's what the river looks like. You've just seen like, representations. That's not what the river is from experience, from simulation before there are words. So this is all. So I want you to go and really think about, I'm not even going to use river. I want you to think about a body of moving water. I want you to think about a body of moving water, which you know personally, and think about like whatever the biggest body of moving water that you can think of, like kind of get that in your mind. And imagine that you're standing in it, and this exercise, it should definitely be something you're intimate with, something you've put your feet in. Maybe it's just a creek, who knows? And begin to get into the imaginatory space of feeling that to the best of your ability. Like everyone can do this to certain degrees, and the more you like do this type of like imaginal work, the better you become at it. Maybe you can sense, like you can pull from your memory bank what it feels like the rocks under your feet, or maybe it's sandy, or maybe the actual sensation of the water on your legs. And you can open your eyes right now. Throw a shot. That level in which you are experiencing the water is closer to simulation consciousness than thinking about a river as a map. And so to be in simulation consciousness, you don't necessarily have to like activate your ghost body. I mean, that's more or less what we did. That's what the Taoists would call it. To be like you activated your ghost body, your imagination, your imaginatory body, your energy body, all sorts of different things. And to like kind of get that sense and feeling where like maybe for some of you, maybe you could, you could feel it very, very clearly. Maybe some of you it was a memory of a feeling, whatever it is, like, that is closer to the difference of thinking of a river to like understanding the natural world from that level. That is kind of the distinction. What I would encourage you to do is to go outside and maybe look at a tree and recognize how you are defining the tree, what you notice, and notice like how anything that has to do with the naming, with measuring, like anything which is practical like that is matrix-esque. And then try to see what it would feel like to like, just like looking at that tree without necessarily naming it, without like defining it, without giving it purpose. And that is how you begin to develop this kind of like ability to shift consciousness outside of matrix thinking into more simulation. And I'll give you like a little clue or a little hint for like greater reality. So, greater reality thinking. So let's go back to, you're standing in the water, you can have your eyes open right now. And, you've got a bowl, and you go and put the bowl in the water and you take the bowl and you put it out. You're standing right, next to the creek bed or the river bed, wherever you are. And, you look at that water, and then you look at the water, which was in the creek or the river. And, what's the difference? And maybe you might want to go back in your imagination. And maybe in your imagination, you can go back and you can sense, feel, or imagine the sensation of the water rushing past your skin. Maybe you can feel that. Maybe you can sense that. Maybe you can tap into that experiential consciousness. What is that? Because when you look at the bowl of water, that bowl of water is not moving. But when you stand in the creek in which that bowl of water just came from, it's the same water, but there's something different. Matrix thinking is going to be like, oh, well, that's the current. That's caused by gravity. That's caused by whatever Matrix will tell you. And maybe it's an accurate description of like what's making the water move, what's making it move. But nonetheless, there's something else. There's this other thing. There's this other thing that you can't really like see, sense, or feel. And you want to apply the same sort of like moving out of like you stand in the water and you know that it's a current. You know that this is a current. Your matrix mind is this is my current. This is my current. And then you could move out. You move out of that thinking and you begin to just like note that it's moving. Note that it's moving. And it's, I mean, I do this stuff all the time and it's still like, it's like, it's a practice. It's a discipline. It's not easy. It's work to be able to free your mind from the naming of something, from the experience of something. And as you do that more and more and more and more, you develop the muscle of, moving out of matrix consciousness. And if you haven't figured this out yet from this little exercise we've done, when you were in matrix consciousness, when you were naming things, you weren't thinking, oh, I'm in matrix consciousness. In fact, that probably felt more real. That's the thing which is matrix consciousness. It is the standard state for most of us. And what we're doing is like wherever you are is like you're trying to like develop the muscle, which is which is, you're trying to develop the muscle, to be able to differentiate and move further and further out of the matrix consciousness. And that's not necessarily to say you're not going to use it, but it's recognizing how you use it, when to use it, and when to tap out of it. So, let me go and wrap up this last part for the YouTube folks. So this is why this is important. This is why this is important. During times like this, particularly times of like changing the guards, mate, survival stuff is going to come in, and your mind's going to be even more focused on how do I do matrix stuff. And there's going to be a significance for that. I'm not saying don't think that way. But that's going to develop your muscle to be your consciousness muscle to become even more ingrained in matrix consciousness all the time, and that is easier for the matrix consciousness to bring you along. And so let me go and wrap it up this way. So the reason why, and we're not going to go, I'm just going to touch upon this. The reason why understanding the current is so important, and being able to understand the current from the consciousness of simulation and greater reality. And the greater reality is the recognition that the current is more than just a friggin' current, but it's not defining it. But let me give a little bit of matrix thinking, and I'm going to define it for you. That current, that movement, is the movement of life on earth. It's that friggin' simple. It's that friggin' simple. And the more connected you get, not from a matrix thinking, it begins with matrix thinking, we're talking about it matrix-wise, but then as you begin to recognize, like, oh, this is the current, and I'm aware of the current, but then you release that need to define it as a current and just to experience, but still understanding that it is a something. And then when you also understand it's a something of significance of life on earth, and you're surrendering to it, that is when you become aligned to that. And then what the current does is it takes you effortlessly along on life. In the same way that you do not think about the digestive process and it naturally happens, the same thing is true here. And we've all been conditioned to get away from it. And then the inversion, the matrix version of this current, as it's always been, is the friggin' algorithm. Same idea. The algorithm is, well, here, I'll give you three of them. So you got the algorithm, you got the currency of the banks, and you got the current of the electrical grid. They're all tapping into this fundamental movement of life. That's how it's done. That's how it takes you from that to this. So the algorithm, you go and you say something, and your little Siri bot hears it, and then your face bot book gives you an ad for the very thing. And probably not the thing. This is the thing which I think is most interesting. You said something about like you're like, I'm going to take a trip, and then it knows to give you trip information. Like, that's the algorithm. The algorithm is carrying you along that path. And like, surely you're like, wow, that's convenient. That's great. That helps me navigate the matrix. But if you are looking to develop the muscle to, escape the matrix consciousness, because this is what I think is going to really be, at least for the short period of time, is going to be significant, is being able to go in and out of matrix consciousness. Because, I said this in the very beginning, like, I still need money. I'm assuming you still need money. We're still in that world. So we're still playing a little bit with matrix consciousness or matrix living. And that means we have to have matrix consciousness. But as we become more and more skilled with moving in and out of these consciousnesses and recognizing what they are and how to go and connect to this other area, is when the greater reality, we didn't even talk about the greater reality much, when the greater reality current brings you through life. And that, my friend, is how you navigate the unknown. So, all right. So what is that? It's 39 friggin' minutes. All right. There's a nice freebie for my friends. All right. So, my YouTube friends, if you think about it, if you're interested, come on over to Subscribestar. at Susquehanna Alchemy. There'll be a link in the description below. If you're thinking about a biomancy session, any one-on-one work, go to Susquehanna Alchemy. I love working with people. That's my favorite thing to do. We do your story. We talk about all this sort of stuff. And, you know, it's good. It is good for you to talk to people, like-minded people during this time. So, with that, you know, this is Mike saying goodbye until next time.